Thank you for joining us. My name is Nancy Towns, and I'm here with several of the NAfME staff that you'll be seeing during Music Education Week. Tonight we're going to talk about Capitol Hill Day and planning your day, and we'll go over some logistics. Next slide. Okay, for just an overview, we want to talk tonight about preparing for your appointments and what you're going to do before you have your appointments with your elected officials. And then we're going to go over the federal legislative asks that you'll be talking about during those appointments. And at the end, we'll have questions and answers. There are two ways that you can ask questions. First one being typing into that box that some of you have already used today to communicate with us. And you can type all through the presentation, and we'll get to the answers at the end. The other way is on Twitter, and it's at NAfME, and you can send questions and remarks to the Twitter account. We love to interact with you on Twitter. So let's get started. Next slide, please. So preparing for Capitol Hill visits should have started about a month ago. We sent out some previous communication that said that presidents should serve as the team leaders for your state, and that they would coordinate the scheduling of meetings with elected officials. If the president is unable to do it, they were asked to designate somebody else in their stead. And just so you know, the time frame for Tuesday the 26th, and it can be different for each person depending on if you have to leave for a flight or something. But it's going to start at 6:30 in the morning, and it could possibly end at 5 p.m. or later if you wish to stay in the city. So we've got an all-day proposition. So let's go over some logistics. Next slide, please. Okay. Upon your arrival in Baltimore, one person, and that's going to be your president most likely, is going to pick up 2 Hill Day information folders at the MEW registration desk. So when you register for MEW, you're going to ask for your Hill Day folders, and you're going to get 2. Each delegation gets 2 because we wanted to make sure that the larger delegations were going to have enough information to spread through everybody. So just as a courtesy, we gave everybody 2 folders. Inside the folders, you're going to find maps, restaurant information for Capitol Hill, a bus schedule, and an overview of legislative issues for discussion with your representatives during your Hill visit. Most importantly, please note that each folder will also contain tickets for the orientation that you're going to have. It's an NAfME NAM-sponsored orientation, and it's going to be at the law firm of Nelson Mullins in Washington, D.C. Next slide. Now, due to overwhelming demand, we are completely full. We have had our buses filled up, and the space that we're going to have for the orientation is full. So we only are going to be able to provide tickets on the bus for people who have already talked to me or emailed me their names. You've already confirmed that you're going to participate in Hill Day. So I should have had some sort of interaction with you and your state. If you're unsure about whether your group has tickets or they've talked to me, go ahead and email me. I've put my email address up on the screen. It's nancyp@nafme.org, and we can figure out whether or not I have you down. But in most cases, anybody who's contacted me, I have emailed back. If you are on this webinar and you have not talked to me, you haven't expressed your interest to participate in Capitol Hill Day, we do welcome your participation in Hill visits, and I will be happy to help you with suggestions for travel arrangements into Washington, D.C. We just don't have any more room on the buses. So please make sure to get in touch with me if you're interested. Next slide. This is an important slide. This is about the buses. The buses are going to be very prompt. Please remember that we're going to be leaving via bus at 6:30 a.m. sharp. So that bus is going to go at 6:30 whether everybody's on it or not. Coffee is going to be served in the lobby of the Marriott between 6 and 6:30, and they'll have to-go cups to bring on the bus, so that'll be a little bit of a wake-up for you. And then when we get into Washington, D.C. at Nelson Mullins, we'll be having breakfast during the orientation. So you will get something to eat, have something in your stomach before the day starts. Now, if you made your appointment and it's an early appointment, you may leave the orientation or skip the orientation altogether if that's the only time that you were able to make your appointment with an elected official. We completely understand. So don't feel bad about that. As far as return buses, they're going to leave Nelson Mullins, so that's the same spot that you were dropped off at 11 o'clock and at 2 o'clock. Those are the only two buses that are leaving from Washington, D.C. to go back to Baltimore. They're going to depart, like I said, on time. They can't wait for passengers. The first destination of the buses will be the airport, so people who have flights can be there on time. And then the next stop will be the Marriott Hotel in case you want to go back to the hotel. If you feel that you need to stay past 2 p.m., if you have appointments that are 3, 4, 5, whatever, and you're unsure about how you're going to get back to Baltimore, please give me a call or email me. There is a light rail, the MARC train, that can take you right back close to the hotel. Next slide. All right. Orientation at Nelson Mullins, the time has changed from previous communication that you have received due to the large amount of people that we have. Juggling all of the luggage and whatnot is going to take some extra time. So the actual orientation won't start until 8:30, and it will go to 9:30. And like I said, if you have an appointment booked early, it's okay to leave the orientation. Breakfast will be served there. You'll get greetings from NAM. NAfME staff will speak with you and give you an overview of the goals for the day. Important note, your luggage will be stored in this building, and it will be there until you come to claim it. And there will be somebody watching over it all day, so nobody will mess with your stuff. Okay, next slide. All right, this is a map of Capitol Hill, and I put it in the presentation because I wanted you to see that it's really quite a large space, and you need to make sure that you wear comfortable shoes, especially if you're going to be going back and forth between the Senate side and the House side. On the right side, there's a little M, and it says Union Station. That's where the metro station is and the train station. Nelson Mullins is right near that area. So you'll see that, well, when we are dropped off, we're going to be near the Senate side of the Capitol. And then if you look across the mall, you see the Capitol in the middle, and then the buildings over on the other side are the House side buildings. Also take into consideration the humidity in Washington, D.C. I know some of you come from places that don't have much humidity, and it can be overwhelming. And so take that into consideration with your clothing that you wear that day. Dress business professional, staff people that you see on Capitol Hill are going to be dressed all kinds of ways, but we're ambassadors for our profession, and we want to look very nice. So keep that in mind. Next slide. All right, preparing for your meetings. Always do research on your elected officials, and you can check out their websites. If you Google their name, you can probably come up with some news articles that are fairly current. See if you have anything in common. Maybe you play tennis, and so does the senator, and you might talk about that along with music education. It's always fun if you do something similar. And then you also look at their voting records, see how they voted on education issues. You might be surprised, and a lot of times, they won't agree with you, but always be respectful and give them the facts on your side of the story. I want to let you know that, especially on the House side, several of the members have only been serving for 18 months, and they've only had 18 months to learn everything about every subject. And so they may not have heard about music education at all. And this is your chance to form their idea about music education. And it's kind of exciting. You're the first face that they see. So take advantage of that and be wonderful as ambassadors. Next slide. All right. Both Chris Woodside and I worked on Capitol Hill, so we can tell you that these are truly good tips to talk to either a staff person or the elected official. Always have a personal story to tell. Elected officials love to hear about people in their district. They love to hear about kids especially. And the best thing to do is if you can relate it to one of our legislative asks. For instance, if we want music to be a core subject, if you can tell them a story about a child that was really helped by music class, you saw a turnaround, it changed their life, you can make them see that music should be a core subject. And so those kind of stories are always well received and memorable. The next thing is keep it short and sweet. If you talk and talk and talk, you're going to, they'll lose interest just like anyone else. And also talk about issues that are near and dear to your heart. If you look through the legislative acts, which we will be talking about later, and you don't really get one of them or you don't care much for one of them, that's okay. Don't talk about it. Pick the ones that you really care about and discuss those with your elected official, because your message will naturally be stronger that way. Finally, follow up with the elected official, and if you meet with a staffer, follow up with them as well. Send them a thank you note. Make sure they have your business card if you have one. Just let them know that their time, the time that you spent with them was appreciated. And also, just to let you know, we want to know what happens in your meetings as well. So let Chris Woodside know. He's going to be making a spreadsheet, a database, keeping track of what happened on these congressional visits this year. And so please let us know how your visits went. So at this time, I'm actually going to turn it over to Chris, and he's going to talk about the meat of your meetings, and those are the legislative issues.
Thanks so much, Nancy, and thank you to everyone this evening who's joined us for your patience during the early part of the webinar when we had some technical difficulties. Certainly, there are many, many benefits to technology. We're encouraging everybody to tweet during the webinar tonight, but the flip side of that is it's not invincible, and on occasion you have to deal with the drawbacks. So we really appreciate your patience this evening during what is an extremely important presentation for your preparations for Music Education Week. And to that end, after Nancy's great logistical overview, which should have you primed and ready to hit Capitol Hill in a week, I want to talk to you about what exactly you're going to do there. So what you see in front of you right now is the Music Education Policy Roundtable's 2012 Federal Legislative Agenda. For those of you who may be scratching your heads thinking, why isn't this the NAfME legislative agenda, let me clarify this right away. Moving forward, this is what you'll see on an annual basis from us. NAfME is an active member, in fact, the founding association of the Music Education Policy Roundtable, which is a coalition now of 17 member groups from the music education field, all representing different subfields, all doing good work on behalf of the profession. The core mission of the coalition is to speak for one voice on behalf of music education, which means that in addition to our governance on Capitol Hill next week, the governances of all of these associations will hopefully be speaking on Capitol Hill using the same language that you will. So while this is NAfME's legislative agenda, it is also the roundtables, and I would encourage you to start thinking of it as one and the same. It will do great wonders not only for NAfME but for the entire profession. We're very proud to be representing all these different groups under the flag of the roundtable. So what is the roundtable all about? Well, the roundtable has a mandate, and before we get into the asks, let's talk about the mandate, because the mandate is really the most important part of the discussion that you can be having on Capitol Hill with your representatives. So the mandate is to ensure that Congress maintains the status of the arts as a core academic subject in any reauthorization of ESEA or the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with as No Child Left Behind. If I would encourage you to talk about just one thing when you're on Capitol Hill, this would be it. All of our asks are very important, and as Nancy stated very articulately, you should spend your time, your limited time, in Hill meetings talking about the issues that matter to you the most. But maintaining the arts, and by virtue of that, music education as a core academic subject under ESEA is the federal footprint, so to speak, for your field. And it's incredibly important to have this recognition in Washington, D.C. that sort of flows out across the country and can be pointed to in any state, in any jurisdiction, in any town as music being core, a principal part of the school day of a balanced curriculum. And it's incredibly imperative that we continue to maintain that status in any reauthorization. And as an unfortunate reminder, the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act is now 10 years overdue. So our work is very, very important next week. Next slide, please. Moving forward, now we're going to talk about the asks that are part of the legislative agenda. And again, just to reiterate, you should spend your time focusing on the issues that are of the utmost importance to you and speaking to them in the language that matters to you the most. So this first issue is one that I'm sure many of you have been hearing a lot about. Many of our governance members, our leaders within NAfME have been deeply embroiled in conversations about music teacher evaluation. Education evaluation is a hot topic in Washington, D.C. and across the country right now. NAfME has been an absolute leader in trying desperately to ensure that music educators who are certainly not afraid and no stranger to evaluation as part of sequential standards-based education in the classroom are evaluated on a fair basis, not on math scores, not on reading scores, based on criteria germane to your field. And so this ask speaks to the importance of that. And what we're asking is very fair. We're not asking for a mandate. We're asking that Congress, with the help of the Department of Education, offer guidance language that recommends music educators be evaluated on just that, on criteria that is germane to their field. And the big fancy ask in front of you is longer than that. You can read the whole thing now or later. But that's the crux of it. And certainly you've all had your own particulars and situations that you've dealt with, and I'm sure you can speak to your own stories when it comes to this ask. So if this is something that you would like to discuss with a member of Congress, I would encourage you to do so. Next slide, please. So our next ask, unfortunately, is an ask that we've been asking for many years now. It's an equally important ask. It has to do with research collection. And what we're asking is that the U.S. Department of Education be advised by Congress to collect data that is relevant to the success or failure rates and stability rates of music education programs across the country. There is a document. It is put out on an annual basis. It's called the Schools and Staffing Survey, and it's administered by the Department of Education. And there are questions within that survey that speak to all of the core academic subjects other than the arts. And what's so troubling about this is, of course, as music advocates, we understand that we need all the help that we can get, and there's only so much that we can do to track situations across the country, which is a quick plug here for our groundswell, why it's so important for all of you to tell us what's happening in your neck of the woods. So what we're doing is we're asking the Department of Education to add this one simple question, which doesn't cost almost any money at all, to the Schools and Staffing Survey, so that we have a lay of the land. We know where music education is in trouble and where we can deploy our shock troops and make a difference. And we're asking Congress to help us get something through the Department of Education in that survey that speaks to music education specifically. So that's another great ask that you can talk to your members about. Next slide, please. Okay, here's another big one. This is our accountability ask. This is also an ask we've had for a couple of years now. We've made some good progress in particular offices on this front. And again, evaluation, accountability, these are not buzzwords that are scary to music educators. and we encourage all of you to embrace them on the Hill and to send that message to your elected officials that, that you are ready for systems to be employed across the country that are fair, that are equitable to you and to your students, and that are based on reasonable criteria. And so what we're asking for Congress in the reauthorization of ESEA is that they incorporate what we're basically calling a scorecard or a report card that has to do specifically with music education, so that when we're analyzing a program, not at the federal level, but appropriately at the local level based on criteria germane to any particular jurisdiction, there's a way to do that is fair and based on music criteria, which is not often the way that it's happening right now. So that's another great ask. Next slide, please. Okay, on to our funding ask. So unfortunately, I have to say something similar about this ask that I said last year. The economy has had a bit of an uptick, but not nearly enough for us to be going in there with our hands out asking for a lot of money. So while we ask for funding support for all arts and education programs at the federal level, we do so in support of our friends, and we do so on behalf of the field. It is not an ask that the Roundtable has incorporated, and it is not an ask that we're asking that you take to Capitol Hill. There isn't much money for programmatic funding for non-STEM subjects, which is terrible, and it's something that we're working very hard to change. But the money in arts and education funding does not go to music education specifically. So as music advocates, what's so important to us on behalf of NAfME and the Roundtable is that when you're on the Hill, if you do get to cover this subject matter, you talk about Title I, Title II, all title funding availability. This is the kind of funding stream that, with clarification from Congress, can go to help students in disadvantaged districts, students coming from impoverished backgrounds who do not have the benefits of music education that we all know are so important and hold so dear. If you have a story that, in particular, with relation to this ask about somebody in an area, a pocket of the country that really would have had nothing else if not for a music program, possibly you know that this is in a Title I area, this is a great ask for you to be speaking to because, again, your personal input on this matter will be hugely important. But again, I can't stress, we're not going into to Congress this year and asking for funding dollars for any specific program for music education. There is not a program like that at the federal level right now, though we certainly hope that the tide will change and that will be different down the road. What we're asking for is fairness. We're asking for students that do not have the advantages of a solid music education program, which is so important to a balanced curriculum, that they have the opportunity to incorporate that into their daily life, and we need specific language from Congress that clarifies that that's a possibility. Next slide, please. Okay, and moving right along in that same vein, this ask has to do with accessibility as a whole. So in the last couple of months, Nancy Towns and I have been working very closely with Senator Bob Casey's office from Pennsylvania on an amendment that was incorporated into the most recent attempt to reauthorize the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And that amendment dealt with the funding of non-STEM subjects in general. So sort of going back to our funding question about arts and education there. There's a little bit of money in that pot. There would be a little bit of money in that pot if that bill had passed. What we were working to do was to incorporate in our sneaky lobbyist ways a little bit of language in there that would talk about the importance of ensuring that there is classroom time available for music education across the country. And again, this would not be a mandate, not much as a mandate from Congress, but having the guidance language incorporated into the bill, talking about the need for balanced subject time, not extracurricular, not after-school activity, during the school day, is very, very important, and that's something we've been focusing a lot of time on here from the national headquarters. And we would certainly ask that you, again, tell stories about this particular situation as it has played out where you are, what we call the hollowing out of programs often, the elimination of classroom time, the elimination of resources, being asked to teach subject matter that you're not feeling prepared or qualified to teach, being asked to teach general ed teachers rather than teaching your own classes. These are all very important issues that you should bring to light with your members of Congress and the leaders on the education committees. Next slide, please. Okay, this is our final ask for 2012. This ask pertains to charter schools. Charter schools are not going anywhere, and whatever your political persuasion, this is a reality that we have to comprehend at the federal level and across the country. If we do not involve ourselves in the dialogue about public charter schools, we will become irrelevant. So what we have been doing is working with the Department of Education and some of our friends in the education community to try to figure out a way that we can get, again, some guidance language to the administrators, to the leaders in charter schools, in the administration of charter schools, that speaks to the need for preparing students via standards-based sequential music education in public charter so that those students have the same access and benefits of a quality music education program taught by a certified educator as public school students hopefully have. And this is a new ask. I'm very proud that the roundtable approved it. To me, it is a tremendous vote by the entire field of the importance of engaging this topic. And if you are so bold as to take it on Capitol Hill, we would encourage you to do so. And again, if you have knowledge that is germane to a situation in your own jurisdiction, we would greatly encourage you to share it with your elected officials. So that is our 2012 Roundtable Legislative Agenda. And just a couple of closing thoughts I want to have here with you before we move into our question and answer session. First of all, a really big thank you to our friends at both Nelson Mullins, the law firm of Nelson Mullins, and our industry partners at NAM, who will be so kind as to jointly host our orientation session with us this year in the beautiful, beautiful Nelson Mullins law firm, which is directly across, as Nancy mentioned, from the United States Capitol. Those of you attending orientation, hopefully that's everyone on this call, will just be blown away when you see this facility and the gorgeous view from the Rotunda room where we'll be having our in-person orientation session where we will again go over these asks and some logistics, just so anything that gets lost from now till next week, it gets really pounded home on the morning of the 26th. We're so grateful for their partnership. NAM, of course, is a member of the Music Education Policy Roundtable as well, and we are looking forward to many, many more opportunities to jointly advocate for music education moving forward. And again, just on my own behalf, I am just so thrilled at the numbers, the participation level for this year's activities. Music Education Week, of course, being in Baltimore, Maryland, over 100 people have said yes, put me on a bus, send me to Washington, D.C., I want to be a part of this. And that is just a tremendous example of how your national association has taken the lead in not only federal policy on behalf of music education, but how you and the work that you are doing in your home districts is seeding the ground for music education across the country and proving that music educators are truly the advocacy leaders on behalf of the arts. So we're so proud of that and so grateful for your participation tonight and looking forward to your participation in a week. And again, grateful for your hanging with us tonight during our technical difficulties. And what we'd like to do now at the end of our presentation is take some time to go over the questions that have been submitted over the course of the presentation. We would encourage you to please continue submitting your questions if you have more during our remaining time together. And Nancy and I will be more than happy to answer those that we have here as we go through the rest of our time tonight. So to that end, okay, Nancy, I'm gonna read the first one to you. Nancy and I will trade off here. Ready?
Okay.
Okay. What will be discussed at Nelson Mullins? Questions answered? Networking opportunities? This is a good question.
It is. It's a great question. At Nelson Mullins, first you'll hear about the partnership with NAM, and NAM does a lot of Capitol Hill work. They do a fly-in every year where they have people, their members come in and talk to congressional leaders. So they'll give us some tips and pointers. We'll go over the legislative asks that Chris just talked about, and There will be an opportunity to network, of course, on the bus on the way to Washington, D.C., so we'll all be able to talk to each other there. It's going to be a crowded room, to be honest, because we've had such high numbers of people say they're going to participate. So depending on traffic and what time we get there, and whether or not we get the full hour, it could be a networking opportunity. But basically, we're just going to give you information to send you off on your way for the day. All right, Chris. Here's a question for you. What do we do if we lose a luggage tag or we miss a bus?
Oh, great logistical question and a natural fear. We will coordinate this event down to a T. So we will have a system in place for your 90-plus pieces of luggage, which will be stored, as Nancy mentioned, at Nelson Mullins, and we will review that with you long before you get on the bus in Baltimore. And we will ensure that if for some reason a luggage tag is lost, goodness forbid, we will have it replaced on the spot and make sure that there's no issue of your luggage being lost. And we will absolutely have our expert staff on hand in Baltimore on the bus and waiting for us in Washington, D.C. at Nelson Mullins to assist you with any travel snafus, which hopefully, knock on wood, there will be none of, and any problems you have with either getting where you need to go or making sure that you collect your belongings at the end of the day. So hopefully that answers that question. Okay, another good one here, Nancy. All right, if we get messed up with member or aide, I guess that means if you had a meeting with a member and an aide shows up, or vice versa, how do we fix it? Good question.
These people, both your elected official and their aides, are used to seeing everyday people from their district, and so they're not going to be alarmed if you mess up or anything like that. If they ask you a question and you don't know the answer to it, just tell them that you don't know the answer to it, and then tell them that you will get back to them with an answer as quickly as possible. And then you can contact NAfME staff if you need to and give them that answer. But don't be, they're everyday people just like you and I, so don't worry about messing up. Okay. Next question, how can we get pre-service music educators, oops, the screen moved on me. How can we get pre-service music educators informed about music education policy and active in music education advocacy?
I love that question. That's a great question, and I know it's of tremendous importance to our incoming president, Nancy Dittmer. We are going to continue doing a tremendous amount of work with young people, with our collegiate members, with members who are coming into the collegiate ranks out of high school that would be our advocate life force moving into the profession. And I would encourage you, first and foremost, if you're aware of a college-level association or organization that wants to get involved specifically in advocacy, to please contact me. That's Chris W. at NAfME.org. It's possible that that organization could get involved with the roundtable. It's also possible that we can provide certain experiences for young people, either in their jurisdiction or at the national level, to get involved with music education advocacy. And we have a lot to look forward to in terms of getting our young shock troops, if you will, involved in music and supporting the profession, which, as all of you know so well, is critical to your day job of being music educators. Not fair, but critical, because without that support for the profession, it just simply will rely on lobbyists in Washington, D.C., and that frankly is not enough. So great question. Again, something that I know is incredibly important that we'll be working with our incoming president on, and we'll look forward to talking to you a lot more about that in the future. Okay, Nancy, my turn, or your turn, I should say. All right, what if or can someone join last minute for Tuesday? So you talked about that a little bit, but why don't you reiterate?
Yeah, I can't tell you enough times that we want everyone to come to Capitol Hill and visit their elected officials. At this point, we are full. We don't have any more room on the buses or any more room in the orientation room. But you can take a MARC train from the hotel and take it right to Union Station, which you saw on the map is right in the same vicinity that Nelson Mullins is. And you can just go ahead and do your meetings. If you need help arranging that, you can email me at nancyt@nafme.org. All right, Chris. Are there any leave behinds or material?
Love the questions tonight. Great questions to get out of the way so people aren't fretting about this sort of thing. So as Nancy mentioned, when you get to Music Education Week, you're going to pick up your registration packets, which will have all kinds of goodies related to visiting Washington, D.C. and preparing you for Capitol Hill, as well as a copy of the Music Education Policy Roundtable, which was sent to everyone via the executive recital some time ago. If you do not have a copy of the Music Education Policy Roundtable legislative agenda and you would like to see that prior to getting to Baltimore, please, again, shoot myself or Nancy Townsend an email. We'll be more than happy to get a copy to you and your delegation so that you can review it before you get here. That is the document you will get, however, again, when you arrive. Now, as far as leave-behinds go, the answer is absolutely yes. When you get to Nelson Mullins on Tuesday morning, and if for some reason you are planning to make it to the Hill, but you know for a fact that you have not been approved to squeeze into our very crowded orientation, again, let myself or Nancy know so that we can make sure you get your materials regardless. For those of you, however, that will be at orientation, you will get leave-behind packets, many leave-behind packets that you can take to Capitol Hill that will have briefing documents specific to the asks that we have discussed tonight so that you have additional talking points, supplemental materials to support your work. And you will have those in the numbers necessary in order to provide materials to the staff members or members of Congress that are with you on Capitol Hill that you are able to meet over the course of the day. So the short answer is absolutely. We will have every material you could possibly need or want and then some in order to be prepared. And the long answer is please review everything once you get it so that you make sure that if you have any questions, you get them answered either between now and Music Education Week or when you get there. Both Nancy and I, as well as many others from NAfME, will be on the ground to assist you throughout the course of the day. Okay, let's see here, Nancy. We are almost out of time, but we have just a couple more questions here. Let's see. This one is about the roundtable. This is another good question about the roundtable.
Okay, you can answer that.
All right, I guess I'll answer that one since I'm the roundtable guy. We have a question about getting involved with the roundtable, about individuals getting involved with the roundtable. Great question. There are no individuals that are currently members of the roundtable. It is a coalition of associations representing different subfields of music education. That does not, however, mean that if you are an individual that would like to be involved, we wouldn't have that conversation with you. We are still in the proud fledgling days of the Music Education Policy Roundtable, and we want to be in touch with anyone and everyone who is interested in helping the cause, in getting involved on some level. So again, this goes back to the discussion that we had about collegiate members, about getting young people involved, about getting individuals involved who want to do something, and definitely about getting both national and local associations involved. So if you are an individual or you know an individual who is in a position of leadership in the community outside of your NAfME role, of course, and you'd like to become more involved with the roundtable, again, please shoot me an email directly, and I'll be more than happy to have that conversation with you. Do we have any more questions?
I've seen just a few comments about people who are worried about getting from the House side of the Capitol to the Senate side of the Capitol or vice versa. And I guess if you're walking moderately, it might take about 15 minutes. I mean, you can get there faster if you're walking brusquely, but 15 to 20 minutes would probably be, 20 minutes is plenty of time, but I would say about 15 minutes
Yeah, I think that's a great last thought, Nancy. I would reiterate that. Please, as much as we want you on Capitol Hill, and we desperately want you on Capitol Hill, please don't overbook yourself, particularly with the weather, which can be very muggy and difficult if you're from out of town. Wear the right shoes. Prepare yourself for hoofing it back and forth across the mall. It's not a long walk from Nelson Mullins, but if you are coming back and forth to Nelson Mullins for any reason, including a reason I'll mention momentarily, just keep in mind that you're more productive if you have 2 or 3 visits, even 2 visits that are really good, than if you try to squeeze in 5 or 6 and you don't have the ability to make it to half of them. So just a couple final thoughts from me. First of all, again, can't tell you how excited Nancy and I and all of us here at NAfME are to see you in a week. We look forward to this all year. It's really going to be a lot of fun. For those of you that do not have meetings at the 12 o'clock noon hour on Tuesday the 26th, I would recommend that you come on back to Nelson Mullins and join us for our support music live from the shadow of the Capitol, NAfME Coalition Call, which we'll be having with our friends at NAM. And we'll have some space in that same room where we had orientation in the morning. And we welcome you all to listen in. Those coalition calls are great fun. Many of you have probably been a part of them in the past. Our friends at NAM do such a tremendous job with them. And if, again, only if you do not have meetings at that time at 12 noon on the 26th, and you do want to join us, feel free. But obviously, we want you on the Hill as well, so hopefully we'll have people in both places. And the last thing I have to say is that we really hope that you'll spread the word about tonight's presentation to your colleagues. We will edit it, we will tweak it so that we don't have the beginning, and they won't have to listen to that. But we will have the meat of it, the good content from this evening, archived just as soon as possible so that those of you across the country with colleagues that were not able to join us tonight or are concerned about hearing the presentation but did not get a chance, we'll have the opportunity to access it on the Music Education groundswell. Nancy, any final thoughts from you this evening?
It looks like we just have one quick question. They said, what is the name of the informative document that we can receive prior to Capitol Hill Day? That's just the...
That is the Music Education Policy Roundtable's 2012 Federal Legislative Agenda. And we are more than happy to send it to anyone who would like to request a copy. So on behalf of myself and Nancy and all of us here at NAfME, thanks so much for your time this evening. We really appreciate your enthusiasm for music education advocacy, and we greatly look forward to seeing you in a week. Don't hesitate to reach out if for any reason you have a question or need some advice on any front. Thanks again. And